Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going through my grand final predictions and previews for the 2025 Toyota AFL Grand Final. Finally it is here, the last day in September is here. It's always exciting and it should be an interesting grand final, but yeah, let's see how we did in the preliminary finals. So for the prelims I ended up getting the 1 out of 2 correct, that being the first game in Geelong and Hawthorn. I backed in the Cats by 13 points. They actually won by 30 points. So yeah, look, it was a pretty good game for most of the game. The Cats and Hawks preliminary final. The Hawks actually had a very good first quarter. They led at quarter time, by 13 points. But then the Cats stormed home in that second quarter to lead it at halftime by a point. Then in that third quarter, that was really where the game was won. I think they led it by a few goals at three-quarter time, and then the Hawks ended up making a late surge in that fourth quarter. But yeah, look, the Cats, they were just far too strong, and they probably proved why they were the better team. But you do have to give credit to Hawthorn for being the 8th seed and making it through to a prelim for the first time since 2015, I believe, since North Melbourne. You also have to give credit to the Cats, who did lose Tom Stewart and Jack Henry, who are massive outs that I believe will both be out for the grand final. They still managed to win that game, and yeah, look, it's going to be tough without those two in the grand final, but you got to give credit to the Cats because they were awesome in that the second half especially, and yeah, they're through to another grand final. And then the second preliminary final we did have was between the Pies and the Lions, and we saw Collingwood kick the first goal through Mason Cox, but then the Lions took control at quarter time. Then we saw the Pies, similar to the Cats-Hawks game, get on top in that second quarter. They led it by a couple of goals. Then in that third quarter, though, the Lions ended up kicking away and they led it by a couple of goals at three-quarter time. And then the Lions, they were just dominating the Cats. The Pies, and they ended up pulling away and they ended up winning by 29 points. Certainly not what I was expected. I went with the Pies by 20. The Lions actually won by 29. I definitely probably should have put a bit more thought and consideration into Brisbane, but I've still got to remember that they're still the premiers they're still the premiers. So yeah, look, that was a really good win for them. Sam Berry did go down in the game though, so that is another massive out for Brisbane. But with that being said, let's get to the grand final. Before we do get into the predictions for the grand final, I will be doing the Norm Smith and the first goal kicker, as well as who I think will win the grand final, obviously. So yeah, that's what I will be doing. But as our grand final matchup, we do have Geelong taking on Brisbane. Both of these are no strangers to grand finals. Obviously, Brisbane making their third consecutive grand final, which has to be, they're looking to go back to back, and it certainly has to be applauded. Could they be the new modern dynasty if they do win this grand final back to back premiers for the first time since Richmond in 2019? That would be really cool to see if the Tigers could get it done. Sorry, the Lions could get it done here. As for the Cats, we'll go over their last game against the Hawks. They were just really strong against a Hawks team, which was still a bit young and inexperienced, but obviously they brought in a few players this year, Hawthorn. But the Cats were just far much better in that game, I felt like. They did kind of still get on top late in that last quarter, which did help their momentum a bit. Some of their forwards, like Jeremy Cameron, had a brilliant day out. He kicked 3 goals. So he'll be looking to do that in the grand final here. But yeah, look, the Cats, it was just a dominant performance at the MCG, and they yet again through to another grand final. And yeah, look, the last time they made a grand final was 3 years ago against Sydney. So it really hasn't been that long for both sides, especially Brisbane obviously making it last year. But the Cats will be wanting to still get revenge, obviously, because obviously couple of weeks ago in the qualifying finals, the Cats ended up getting the result. But last year's preliminary finals, the Lions still won that, and that probably got them the premiership. So this is a massive game for both teams, but the Cats, they'll be wanting to get revenge. And the Lions last week, well, they were just far too strong for the Pies, as we just said. Probably proved why they still are the better team than Collingwood, obviously, just being much more in their prime than the Pies with that old age demographic for the Pies. But Will Ashcroft kicked a couple of really good goals off the ground and kicked one from about 50, which bent back. And how about Ty Gallop for Brisbane? Gee, he was awesome. I think he'll be playing in the grand final, so they've had to work around with a couple of small forwards this year for Brisbane, obviously with the loss of Joe Danaher and Eric Hipwood, obviously being out lately, but they've been able to fill those roles perfectly. And yeah, look, they were just really good against the Pies. So that does leave us with a Geelong and Brisbane grand final, as obviously everyone knows. But we'll go through the injuries first. So Jared Berry for Brisbane, I do know, will be out with a shoulder injury here. So that is a pretty massive loss for them. I'm not sure who will come in for him. And as well as for the Cats, they've got a couple of injuries too. Jack Henry, I believe, probably won't be playing. And Tom Stewart is also the massive one for the Cats, their best defender. That's just a massive loss for them, even though they do have some pretty good backs down there. That's just still a massive loss for them, the guy that does a lot of work down there. So that does hurt for the Cats. However, the Cats, obviously, they've got still a few positives. Max Holmes will return. Well, he's been playing this year, but in the 2022 grand final and the 2020 grand final, he did miss both of them due to injury. So I'm expecting him to have a really good game in this one. I think that this should be a very good game. We will see some stars, and he just really lights up the field, Max Holmes. He's such a great player, and it's good to see him finally playing in a Geelong grand final. So this is going to be really interesting to watch between Geelong and Brisbane. Hopefully it is a much more of a closer grand final. If Brisbane can just try and take away, again, this is kind of for both sides here, but I feel like both of these teams do like to just control the ball by chipping it around and just marking contested the other team. So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think both sides have similar game styles, obviously, both really good coaches. So this is going to be very, very interesting here, and hopefully, as I said, it will be a much closer grand final, because the last time we got a closer grand final was, I believe, in 2023 between the Pies and the Lions, and before that, we haven't really had a good one, and I can't even remember the last time we had a great grand final before then. So I think I don't think it will be as close or anything like that as 2023. I still think that there is a better team in this one, but again, it does kind of just depends who shows up on the day here. I know the Cats do have a couple of outs in this one, obviously, as stated, but I reckon I'm going to go the Cats here. I've just got a feeling that, Brisbane, they'll be looking to go back-to-back, but I reckon we saw it a couple of weeks ago. We saw the Cats get up by 38 points in really convincing fashion, which was just really good. Their defensive work was really good, obviously, even though they'll be without Tom Stewart. But I'm going to go the Cats here, and a pretty decent game here by 15 points. And for my Norm Smith award, there were a couple of options that I was thinking of. You could go maybe Jeremy Cameron in there, Shannon Neal, maybe, you've got some other guys there like Grant Myers, Max Holmes, Tom Atkins, but I'm going to go Max Holmes. I just think that he's been one of the best players in the competition this year when he's fit and healthy, and I think he's going to have a really good game on the grand final, and I've got the grand final winning team winning the Norm Smith in Max Holmes as the best player on ground. And obviously I probably should have done my first goal kicker first, to be honest with you, but who do I think will kick the first goal in the grand final? You know what, I'm going to go Will Ashcroft to kick the first goal in the grand final. I think that, if he, depends if Chris Fagan starts him or not. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go Will Ashcroft for the first goal of the game. And let's go the final scoreline. I don't think it will be a really high-scoring grand final. I think it will be kind of average scoring. I'm going to go 78 to 63 as my final score in the grand final. So, everyone, that is my final predictions for the grand final. Let me know your thoughts and predictions down below. Hopefully, it's a very good grand final, and we'll see you in the next video.